this time joined by the sound of a youngster giggling. I went back into my son's room and found I thought I'd be a good girl with him in bed this time, a little more savvy about it, and double-checked before heading outdoors. I could see through a series of holes, a jacket, and what seemed to be skin. Suddenly, a vehicle came up alongside us, sounded the horn. I looked behind us and saw my mother's car. The man blew past the red light that was shining on him. We all used to go to the playground with other kids. I wouldn't be surprised if something strange happened one day. But included in this video, one of the scariest playground stories and true horror playground stories. My mother used to take me here. In my town, there is a large playground, and I'm not joking when I say very huge. It was perhaps the largest exaggeration. If only I knew, I'd be able to take you to the most beautiful playground you've ever seen. The playground's official name was completely made of wood. And every Saturday and Sunday, there would be at least 50 children on Sunday, with all of the parents. I was able to play across it, hidden away in a shady spot to read. One typical example is their periodicals and other publications at the playgrounds. It's been a busy day. I used to be like that. While you're sprinting along a large open platform, I was walking down the street when an older woman came up to me and said hello. She continued gushing about how adorable I was, and she adored my blonde locks. It began to appear as though she knew who I was, based on the manner in which she spoke to me. She then informed me that my mother had departed, as well as the fact that she told her to take me home. Keep in mind that I was only 7 years old at the time. The woman took me to the hospital because she believed in me. A vintage station wagon in a parking lot, where a man I assumed to be her. The driver's seat was occupied by my spouse. As the woman, she behaved all pleasant. I was motioned into the rear seat, but I refused. I recall him ranting and scolding at them regarding something the man was particularly passionate about. He was as fierce and swift as he was. We arrived at the hotel after exiting the parking lot. The light near the park's exit was red. Then, suddenly, a vehicle came up alongside us, sounded the horn. I looked behind us and saw my mother's car. The man blew past the red light that was shining on him. I took up and began flooring. I began to cry as I walked through the streets. I screamed when I realized my mother had no idea. Not long after the man, these people appeared. I pulled over the automobile and shouted at the driver, yelling at the top of his lungs for me to get out of the car. My tears were still streaming down my face when I opened the door. My mother was the next to arrive, and she was terrified. Demi sprang out of the car, hugging me. She didn't comprehend it in the heat of the moment. She couldn't find the tag number or call it. Since 2002, the police have been investigating. There were no mobile phones available. I truly wish I could. I don't recall this day as vividly as I used to. Rather than being one of them, I would have preferred to be one of them. Those memories that the brain chooses to remember. Hi guys, before you keep watching the video, if you want to send a personal true horror story of yours, please send it to me on my email, and I will contact you for sure. Also, don't forget to keep watching your video. In my senior year of high school, I was finally starting to develop feelings for a girl I liked, whom I'll refer to as Anna. Was a heavy marijuana user at the time. It wasn't my thing at the moment, but I persevered. I went along with it because I live in a small town. I live a few blocks away from her, so I'm constantly around. I walked across the bridge before getting a vehicle. It parked across the street from her home. She'd send me AOL instant messages late at night to come hang out in the park every now and again. At night, we just sit on the playground, and she can chat for hours at a time. It was she who persuaded me to smoke with her. It's usually such a secluded spot to hang out, and, particularly at night, the playground was encircled by tall trees. Well, constructing a type of wall. We both snuck out at 11 a.m. last night. We were males in the park's playground. Anna brightened up after they spoke for a time, smacked me on the shoulder in a pleasant manner, suggested that we play hide and seek. For a pair, it may appear immature. Seniors in high school are invited to participate, but it only appeared to be a game of hide and seek. It would be great, she said. When I was finished, I counted to 30 trees. Of course, the first thing that came to mind was to double-check if she wasn't there in the playground. I'd then proceed to the picnic match area. We always took flashlights with us when we went out, because it was before I went to the park. Everyone had flashlights in their phones. I took a step away from the grass, onto the surrounding wood fiber mulch. At the play area, I raised my flashlight to the ceiling. I supposed to find her, When it came to playgrounds, I'd be too lazy to go out if I didn't have to. You've seen those enormous plastic circulars, right? Items having a lot of little holes in them that a lot of playgrounds do not have. However, there was one of those things up on the roof, the highest level of playgrounds, as well as I could see through a series of holes, a jacket and what seemed to be skin. But it was her eye that caught my attention the most. Instead, gazing through one of the holes, I opted against heading up there right away. It would be entertaining to play with her in some way. I wrapped the flashlight around my wrist and waited it, pretending I didn't see her on the playground. I intended to stroll to the picnic spot, switch on the flashlight and take a trip around the room. Back to the playgrounds. The tree snuck in, up on her and frightened the very daylights out of her. Don't ask me why I just got out of her. I wished and I went for a walk to the picnic area. I snuck back after turning off the flashlight. Go to the play areas. I was cautious. They were not to make any noise as they sobbed. The wooden chips on where the playground was built. Before I could even put my foot on the ground, the playground's first platform, something snatched my arm and dragged me away. I yelled, but I stopped when I realized what I was doing. I turned on the radio when I heard the wind laughing. I was pleased to see a flashlight. Obviously, the prank backfired on her. We returned to the top of the mountain after that. I remember playing on the playground as a kid. I inquired if she was aware that I had seen her behind the plastic object at the top of the stairwell, but she was perplexed, acting as though she had never been up there before. I informed her that I had seen someone up. We both looked up at the same time as the little. We'd been hearing cracking noises. Every now and again, I directed the alarming amount of sense. Someone's face was revealed by the light up there, head slumped over the balcony railing. At the same time, we're on a platform above us. Footsteps were heard kicking the wood chips. We were circling directly underneath the platform, seated on. I was the one who made the first move to get us to run, and Anna followed in his footsteps. I finished my work. We ran with a flashlight, which wasn't working. Anna's house hasn't been right in a long time. We walked across the street to her room. I shut the blinds and stayed there for a long time. The night when I didn't want to go home, our late night visits came to an end. Going to the park. I'm a single father raising my 5-year-old kid. In my backyard, which contains an old wooden playground, a large slide, a tire swing, and monkey bars. I've heard that a few of times recently, sounds emanating from the children's playground. I'll begin on the first night I'll be awake. Last week, I was awakened by the sound of something squeaking from outside. It was immediately identified as the sound of the tire swing's rusted chain is whirling. I also heard a small child's voice surrounding me. There's a lot of laughing out there. I assumed it was my fault, so I went to his room to look for him, fast sleeping in his bed as my heart sank. When I saw him in his bed, I knew something was wrong. Strangers were in my backyard, but I was able to get away from them. The back door to the backyard was opened. There was no one back there when the tire went flat. The swing, on the other hand, was spinning slowly, as though I noticed that someone had just gotten off of it. I just loaded it up with some kid and hauled it up. I returned to my yard after slipping into it. However, the next night, I awoke, hearing the sound of someone stomping up and down the hallway, back down the slide, this time joined by the sound of a youngster giggling. I went back into my son's room and found I thought I'd be a good girl with him in bed this time, a little more savvy about it, and double-checked before heading outdoors. I looked through the window. Nothing was out there, even if it wasn't on the surface. At the very least, I walked outdoors to the playground. Anything, just to be certain. Nothing happens for a couple of nights, and I had entirely forgotten about it. But on the other hand, a knock came at my door on the third night when I was in bed. I was astonished when I saw the window. I sat up startled for a few moments. I was terrified to peek outdoors at first, but I ultimately did. I glanced out because I was brave enough to do so. The smear on the misty window eye, on the swing. I could see both swings, set to a nice swinging beat accompanied by a child's laughter. Once again, I ran in the roll-off. I dashed down those steps as quickly as I could, but instead of locating it, I went out the back door, back when there were a few of wayward small kids. Instead, I saw a colossal figure there, hanging over the edge of my play area. Certainly, just glancing at that made my courage turn. I turned to escape out of pure cowardice. Lock the door and phone the number once you're back inside. 911. It took the longest 20 minutes to arrive they'd ever had by the time they got there. Despite this, they pulled down what was left of the playground. I had a limited amount of information I could share with them, and I wish I could say that was the end of it. This isn't the first time it's happened, but it happened just last night. There came yet another knock at my door. I just disregarded it this time, despite the fact that I'm not a fan of it. I'm dreading going to bed tonight. On my property, I'm going to add security cameras. I'll offer an update on my house as soon as possible of what's going on now.